Hello, hello. Welcome to Delaware County District Library's Reader's Advisory Podcast. Here, we'll talk about books, podcasts, and other relevant media. I'm your host, Annie Pasma. Firstly, I would like to say that the staff of the library send our love and sympathy to all who have been affected by this virus. Thank you for your love and support of us as we try to continue our services as much as possible to you, our community. What is What to Read Wednesdays, you might ask? Quite simply, we are going to be recommending books and other literature-related media forms such as podcasts and YouTube channels that might interest you. You can find most of these titles on our ebook platform Libby and Hoopla. If you have questions about Libby or Hoopla, head to our website at www.delawarelibrary.org to find more information. So let's get started. Today we are going to hear directly from our main branch circulation specialist, Via Smith.
Hi, this is Via from the Delaware Library main branch, and the top book I'd like to recommend to you today is one that instantly became one of my favorite YA novels I've read so far. It's Wildergirls by Rory Power. Now, this book just came out in 2019, so it's pretty new, and it is the author's first published novel, which I always love to hear when a book is so well written, because I think it shows that they're a promising new voice for new generations, which we always need. And that way the reader can keep an eye out for future novels of theirs and have something to look forward to if they like the first one. In fact, Rory Powers actually has a second novel coming out this summer of 2020. Unfortunately, it is not a sequel to Wildergirls as I'd hoped. I need more, but I'm still super excited for this next one. It sounds equally interesting. It's called Burn Our Bodies Down. Ooh. So look out for that one. Now, Wildergirls is a young adult sci-fi horror novel about a group of girls who go to a private school on Raxter Island. And a virus known as the Tox begins to spread across the island, first through the woods and wildlife around the school, making it dangerous to go into. Then it infects and kills most of the teachers at the school and further infects the school girls. Now, this virus does cause mutations in the girls, though, some severe as growing a second spine, scales down their arms, and for some girls this means even death, while other girls have less painful mutations, like having their hair glow from a certain aura. But they are all quarantined at the school and sent rations of food, medicine, and other necessities by the army as they wait for a cure that they are promised. Our main character, Hetty, has had one of her eyes fused shut due to the tox, and she spends her time with her best friend, Byatt, and her other friend, Reese, who grew up with her father on the island. Now, Hetty and the rest of the girls have to fight for their survival as they try to uncover the mysteries of Raxter Island, find the cause of the tox, and then try to escape from the island. So, very intriguing. And the reason I personally fell in love with this novel is because it pretty much checks all of my boxes in what I want to read about. It combines two of my favorite genres, horror and sci-fi. Now, this book does have some body horror and violence as part of its horror aspect, but I didn't think it was too gruesome, which was nice because I am not a huge fan of gore. And I'd say the worst of what we do see in that category isn't until about 3/4 of the way through the novel, so you don't have to worry too much if that's also something that makes you squeamish. But it also has really well-written female characters who are not only strong and diverse, but they're flawed. I get very annoyed and dislike Mary Sue characters. I've heard that the male equivalent of that is called a Gary Stew or a Marty Stew, which I think is really funny, but I don't actually think there is a literary term that has been coined for the male equivalent yet, so they should get on that. But a Mary Sue, for those of you who don't know, is a character who is written as basically trying to be perfect. They are sort of a goody two-shoes character. Everybody always loves them, and they can basically do no wrong. I don't like these characters because they aren't realistic, and they're not relatable to me. I personally love reading about flawed characters or anti-heroes, and in the Wildergirls, the characters are believable. I sometimes am frustrated with the characters' choices and behaviors, but I'm always able to understand and relate to why they are acting this way or making these decisions. Then on top of that, I'm still able to go back to loving this character in their strengths, their flaws, and their individual quirks. So many of these aspects give this book a great sense of female empowerment too. It's also a fantastic recommendation for LGBTQ plus representation in novels in a way that feels as natural as the rest of their character attributes, and it's not written in as sort of an archetype that makes up the entire character's being just to be included. You know, again, it feels real, it feels natural. I'm very appreciative of that. And lastly, I will just throw in that the cover is gorgeous. I know you're not supposed to judge books solely on their covers, but this one only intrigued me to read it more and only added to the greatness of this book. In fact, I want a poster of this cover to hang on my wall. That's how much I loved it. Sometimes magic is just made by the understanding the cover artist has of the story that they've been asked to illustrate, and this is a fine example of that. Now, I could go on and on about this book, and I'm definitely not biased, so we will go ahead and move on. So if you're like me and you pick up this book, read it, and are jonesing for more or something similar, then I would suggest something similar like Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. It's another young adult novel that features female camaraderie and LGBTQ plus characters, though it does lean more on the supernatural side instead of the science fiction side. There's also A Grace Year by Kim Liggett, which is another YA novel, and it includes competition between female characters, survival between them, and also surviving the wilderness around them. There's also How We Became Wicked by Alex Yates. This one is a grittier young adult novel, similar to Wilder Girls. It is also about a virus spreading to people. Now, if we're stepping outside of the range of young adult and you want something a little bit older, Annihilation, the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer, is very similar to Wilder Girls in a lot of aspects. It features strong female characters, mysterious mutations to characters' bodies and minds, and the mysteries and fear of the unknown entities they face. It's the Tox in Wilder Girls and what's known as the Shimmer in Annihilation. So those are just a few titles to get you started. Now, my next suggestion is going to step inside the world of comic books. It is a horror comic series called The Empty Man by Cullen Bunn. What a great author name. Now, this horror series is about an FBI and a CDC agent who are working together on a missing brother and sister case. This leads them to the epidemic of the mysterious illness called the Empty Man. This illness causes those infected to become violent, have hallucinations, then either go into a catatonic state or die, often by taking their own life. They investigate the connection between the illness and the missing kids to discover what's behind both of those cases. So the big question in this is who or what is the Empty Man? So I discovered this comic series by hearing it was going to be turned into a movie first, and I always like to try to read the source material before seeing a movie or a TV adaptation, especially if it's something that interests me. I think this is important to be familiar with both of them because often our patrons want to do the same thing, or our patrons aren't even aware that it was a book first, and I'm always secretly trying to suggest our patrons read more. I really liked the story of the comic because I'm a big horror buff and true crime fan, so mixing a crime element, even if fictional, with horror is always something that's going to get me interested. I will warn that this comic series is definitely not for kids. It is an adult comic. The themes and events can be pretty dark, and there is a decent amount of violence since that is one of the symptoms of the illness. Now, these darker themes were pretty original, though, and that's what kept me needing to know more until the end, so this was a plus for me. The characters were also very individualized in their personalities. It was easy to distinguish who was talking even if I didn't have the illustrations, and I really liked the rapport between the two agents. I only reviewed the first volume of this series because the second volume was sort of a restart of the series from the perspective of a woman at the beginning of getting symptoms of the Empty Man illness, and it also changes some of the original characters in volume 1. I always appreciate being made aware of things like that before I start a series, anything like big changes, or if a TV series I'm going to start ends up being canceled early and ends on a huge cliffhanger, so just wanted to forewarn you about all of those things. I'm actually finishing up the rest of this series, and I really hope the restart holds up because the first volume had a very promising mystery with some creepy and psychological aspects to it. So if you're looking for more to read like this, I would suggest looking for more things by Cullen Bunn. He's written a bunch more comics, including one called Harrow County, one called Bone Parish, and he's also thrown his pen into the realm of X-Men and Deadpool comics. He's been compared a little bit to Joss Whedon, who's known for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as well as Firefly, both of which he has written more comics for, and of course now for writing in the Marvel Universe films and shows, but he's also dabbled in X-Men comics. If you're looking for completely different comics by different writers. Something is Killing the Children is another interesting one that has to do with missing children cases, children going into dark worlds and people who have to fight those dark creatures. That is written by James Tynion IV, and it is illustrated by Werther Del Adera. So have you ever wondered where the term the butterfly effect came from? Well, the short story A Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury is your answer. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ashton Kutcher's did not invent that concept. I'm going to read to you, though, the sign that our main character sees at the beginning of the story, which pretty much lays out our summary for this short story. Time Safari Incorporated. Safaris to any year in the past. You name the animal, we take you there, you shoot it. So Bradbury's A Sound of Thunder takes place in a future year of 2055, where a company has created a time travel experience for rich businessmen to pay to hunt game from the past. Our main character, Mr. Eccles, wants his prize to be the Tyrannosaurus Rex. So once they are back in time, they are warned of the consequences of affecting the future by messing with anything out of the rules in the past. But when Mr. Eccles realizes his dream is more than he can handle, he and the rest of the group will have to deal with the ramifications, and I won't spoil what those are for you. So I really liked this because I'm a fan of Bradbury. I really liked his voice in this story. It was a simple enough concept that he managed to still make scary, but also draws attention to the fact that even the smallest thing or a person who thinks that they aren't special is important in the grand scheme of life. I liked how the story's themes and events were still applicable to today's world too, and the story even gives us a hint of political message and undertone, which definitely echoes today's politics. So if you're looking for similar reading material, then I would recommend Ray Bradbury's novel Fahrenheit 451, of course. It is his most famous piece of work. But if you're still looking along the lines of shorter fiction, then I would suggest works by Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, and Robert A. Heinlein, who are known as sort of the holy trinity of sci-fi stories, with Ray Bradbury considered part of that golden age of sci-fi writing with them. The Holy Trinity have written many short stories that you can sift through, and so has Ray Bradbury. His writing tends to be more lyrical than the others, as he also wrote some short stories in horror as well, so you have two different genres to look out with that.
Thanks to Via for her recommendations. As you can see, if you love a bit of horror and YA, Via is the person to talk to. As Youth Services gears up for our summer reading program, I have been immersing myself in children's literature. Today, I recommend Saving Winslow by Newbery Medal winner Sharon Creech. Louis is a young boy whose father brings home a sick newborn mini donkey. Although no one expects it to live, Louis is determined to nurse him back to health and names the donkey Winslow. In Saving Winslow, Louis learns about determination, how to make new friends, and how to emotionally deal with the absence of his older brother Gus, who has recently joined the military. Perfect for fans of Charlotte's Web, and if you haven't read anything by Sharon Creech, do yourself a favor and pick up Saving Winslow or her award-winning book Walk Two Moons. Both are excellent audiobooks as well. Well, folks, that wraps up today's episode of What to Read Wednesdays. Remember, if you have any questions, visit us at www.delawarelibrary.org or email us at askus@delawarelibrary.org. I'm your host, Annie Pasma. Tune in next time to hear more favorites from your friends at Delaware County District Library. Thanks for listening.